Hi everybody and welcome to Teddy TV. Today you join me on another new venue. This is called Woodland Waters in Lincolnshire. Today you're going to be focusing on skimmer bream and bream fishing. Now I don't profess to be an expert at catching bream at all. In terms of this style of fishing, it's pretty alien to me. But over the years, I've had a little bit of success, and hopefully the tips and tricks that I give you today will help you get a few extra fish in the bank. Now this lake is quite a big open water, it's several acres in size, so it's something a little bit different from what we've done before on the bank, where we tend to concentrate on the pole and the waggler. Today when it comes to skimmer bream and bream fishing, there's one method that stands out more than any and gives so much success, and that's the swim feeder. So today we're going to be fishing in the open water to kick off with, on an open-ended swim feeder, with a view to potentially moving in onto the pole line as the fish move in as the day progresses. That's their natural sort of patrol route. As we've said before, the three key rules to fishing is location, presentation and feeding. So location wise, where do you start when you've got a big expanse of open water in front of you like this? Well, I've had a little plumb around with a 1 ounce lead, and I've cast around here, there and everywhere, and I found a little bit of extra depth. I believe it's up to around 15 feet in the middle, and just on line with the chap on the far bank. There's quite a lot of anglers on today, which is pretty surprising considering it's so cold. You may well see the breath vapour coming off. It's still chilly today, but nevertheless there's plenty of water to go at, plenty of room for everybody. So let's talk through the bait tray and the setup today. This should give you a bit of an idea. With most styles of fishing, for me, it's trying to keep it as simple as possible. I'll kick off with the ground bait. The ground bait mix today I've gone for is a bag of Teddy Fisher dark bream. The water's incredibly clear as it gets cold. We've had 2 hard frosts this week, so I want a dark mix that's going to sit on the bottom. But I've also added half a bag of the method mix. Now don't be fooled by the name method, it's not necessarily just for a method feeder. The method mix is of any of our range. It means that it's a denser and coarser mix. So in this deep water what I'm looking for is a dryish mix but sticky at the same time. So it's a bit of a contradiction, but I want it to be dry so it gets to the bottom and sort of explodes out of the feeder, but it needs to be sticky enough to stay in the feeder to go down into that sort of 15 foot of water. Now what's important as well, when we've done the ground bait mix, is to keep it as fine as possible. So you won't be able to see that on the camera, I'm sure, but I've put it through a riddle, and what I've done is I've left all these big bits, all these clumps just there, bits of extra big pieces of cereal, bits of maize and hemp, etc. That can go to the birds. I'll throw that on the bank, and the robins and the sparrows can have that. And it leaves me with a nice fine mix. Because it's so cold, we don't want to be filling the fish up with big lumps like that and lots of sort of cereal and bait in here. So there's not that much come out. It's a relatively fine mix anyway, but I think that will be perfect. And what I'll do is I'm going to kick off with 5 feederfuls on that line at about 30 metres. That's the sort of hole I've found. It drops off a bit to my left hand side. For on the hook wise, I've got some standard 2mm micro pellets. I've doused them in a bit of Teddy Fisher booster, that's monster crab. In these big expanses of water like this, we need attraction. The fish could be anywhere in the lake, they could be shoaled up together, so extra smell, extra scent in the water, and I think a little bit of a sort of a fishy scent today in the form of the crab will work well. Got some maggots, live maggots, they're just coming round after coming out of the fridge a couple of hours ago. They'll be live and kicking soon. But alongside them we've got some dead maggots, so just putting a little bit of water there. And dead maggots, what I can do with that is pack it into the feeder, plug each end with the ground bait, and we know they're not going to be wriggling into the silt, and it's going to give a nice area on the bottom to attract the fish, red and whites on both occasions. I believe there's a number of bream and skimmers in here. I believe that there's lots of big roach as well, which could be quite interesting. There's some carp, there's tench. So we don't know what's going to happen when the tip goes round. But if I do start getting problems with small fish, then I've got some sweet corn as well. And the idea, a bigger bait that they can't get that in the mouth as easier. And then last but not least, you can't go bream fishing, I believe, without some worms. And that's just a handful of worms that I've got out of the compost heap in the garden. I'll chop them up and pop them again. I'll plug the feeder either end with some ground bait, some chopped worm in the middle, and we'll probably have a couple of small red worms on the hook, maybe tip it with a maggot. So that's the bait tray. It's really, really simple. We don't want to complicate things at all. We just see what happens. The same theme as all our other sessions that we've done in the past. We'll go steady. I'll put a couple of cage feeders in of bait, and then we'll just take it from there. In terms of tackle, so as I say, I'm not an expert in this. You get a lot of anglers using braid and things like that. I'm not familiar with braid. I've only ever used it in the sea. So, you know, I was taught a long time ago to do what you know and not what you think you know. And I'm just used to fishing with this sort of standard setup. So I've got 6 pound line, that's a Guru line. And I've got 11.5 foot feeder rod. It's just that extra sort of 6 inches or a foot or so compared to, you know, the length of chuck. I could get to that easily with a 9-10 foot rod, you know, casting 30 metres, but there's no point in struggling, there's no point in undergunning yourself. And there's quite a few, you can see there's an overhanging tree, there's a couple of snags down the right. By having a slightly long rod, if I do hook any bream of any sort of size, then I can control it better with a longer length of rod. So the rig wise, what we've got here, we've got a 50 centimetre hook length, and that's 0.12, so it's just over 3.5 pound. There's a rule on the lake that the minimum line that you can use is 3 pounds, so I can't go lower than what I've got on here. So it's 50 centimetres, and I won't be, you know, I could be tempted to cut that down if I'm missing bites. I will shorten that, not a problem at all. And the big thing when you fish an open end feeder is to try and avoid tangles, really. And the easiest way to avoid a tangle is by creating a boom away from your feeder. So I've got a running feeder on a swivel. It's a snap link swivel, so I can change that feeder. That's quite a big one. It's a 25 gram medium Drennan cage feeder. That's just to get some bait in to start with. I'll then swap down to a smaller open end feeder just like that, and if need be as well, I'll also try a winder feeder. They can make a difference where we plug the bait in there. It doesn't explode out the feeder. The fish have got to come in and root around and find that hook length. So the snap link swivel, it's stopped by a couple of shot just there, they're number 8 stops. And then we've got around 4 or 5 inches of just twisted line. So you take the line, make a loop for your hook length, and then just twist the line. So you've got about 4 or 5 inches, just enough to go beyond where your hook length starts. So if you can see that on the camera, there's the feeder and the hook length starts here. So there's no way that my hook length's going to get twisted around here because of that stiff twisted line. And it's as simple as that, really. It doesn't get any more simple than this. The hook is a size 14. Now it sounds quite big on such a cold day. It's a Drennan carp maggot, but when you're fishing with worms or double baits or pieces of corn and you're casting out, you need a slightly bigger hook to keep that bait on, otherwise it's going to be falling off or flying off on the cast. And also, again, if we're going to be plagued by small fish, then it's easier to have a bigger hook, use a bigger hook bait, and that should avoid them as well. So we're going to get fishing. We'll get sort of 3 or 4 of those cage feeders in. We'll take it from there, see how the session progresses. And as I say, as it warms up slightly, I think it's only going to be about 8 degrees today maximum, but I imagine that's enough to bring the fish a little bit closer. They'll have a little bit of a chew, certainly this afternoon, and then I'll possibly fish the pole a little bit closer in and see if those fish have come a little bit towards me. So let's see how we go. Let's take a look at some of the footage off the action camera, because something transpired that I found really interesting. I mentioned at the start of the session I'm not familiar with braid, but what you'll see in a second is a couple of little plucks on the tip. I didn't see these during the session. There's the first. There's a second one just there. This is way before I strike. Now, if I'd have used braid, perhaps those bites would have been more exaggerated. Perhaps the fish is already on with that long hook length. The actual bite or the strike is coming up just now. There we go. And I now strike into the fish, play it, and it's one of the initial skimmer bream that I caught. But always learning points when you've been fishing, and using the action camera, I've just spotted some things that I perhaps wouldn't have seen in the past. Okay, we're about 40 minutes into the session now. We've had 2 skimmers, about £1.50 a piece. It's getting really cold. There's a bit of a breeze kicking off now, which is quite chilly. That's no bad thing, because I thought at the start of the session we needed a bit of a ripple on the surface, and that's starting to happen now, so that's good. The fish are not giving themselves away at all. Normally on these big open waters, you're looking for telltale signs of the fish showing themselves, maybe bream rolling or topping. It's probably a bit too cold for that, and they're not giving themselves away at all. I've seen nothing move at all. I'm just going to change bait. I'm going on to double dead red maggots. The 2 I've had so far have been on a dead red and a piece of worm. All I'm doing is just getting a little bit of chopped worm and then just plug in the end of the feeder with the ground bait. So I've had a little plumb around with that 1 ounce lead just to find the contours of the bottom, and I'm pretty sure I'm fishing in the right area as it slopes off. When you cast out, it's important to sink that line and just watch it on the surface as it's sinking, and just tighten up. I'm using a 1 ounce tip, which I use pretty much for all my feeder fishing, even if it's with a method fishing for carp on a commercial water. If on these big lakes we had a lot of undertow, it was a really windy day, I'd be tempted to step up to a 1.5 ounce tip. If it was a big open reservoir, maybe even a 2 ounce tip. But as I say, nice and flat today, just a little bit of a ripple kicking off now. And those 2 skimmers had a lovely size and really positive bites as well. The first one nearly took my rod in, so I'm not too concerned about the length of that hook length just yet. If the bites start getting a little bit finicky and I'm missing them, then I'll shorten it. I won't hesitate in shortening that hook length. I'm not seeing, as I said before, there's a lot of people fishing. I'm not seeing that much being caught. Oh, there's a touch. Oof. It's a case of sitting on the hands and not striking at everything, wait for the positive bite. As I say, those 2 that I've had were quite robust bites, so I'll wait for that positive bite at the moment. Well, the day's not panned out as we planned it would. The idea was to fish the swim feeder and hopefully that tip would be busy all day, but that's just not been the case. Fished it for about 1.5 hours and I've managed a couple of decent skimmers, £1.50 sort of size. And I've primed this pole line, as I said earlier on. A couple of balls, bit of chopped worm. It's very, very deep. It's sort of 10 foot deep at 9 metres. So I'll run you through the pole rig that I've got. We've got a 0.8 of a gram float just up here. It's a Drennan old one of mine, Drennan Team England one. And then coming down, we've got a Olivet of 0.6 of a gram with 4 number 8s underneath. And then we've got 4 number 9 droppers, and the idea behind that is if the skimmers do come onto it, I'll bulk them droppers together just above my 6-inch hook length, and my hook length again is 0.12 because I can't go any less than that. With a 16 hook, you need a bigger hook in this depth of water to make sure you penetrate. And I bulk them number 9s together to do like a double bulk rig, and then I'd be looking for lift bites. So I've got a few bites. I've just had my first skimmer, a couple of roach and a nice perch. But yeah, the day has not panned out as we planned, but that's fishing. And if we can get a few fish here in the net just to end the day, then so be it. See if we can get a bite. And when we flick the rig out, because it's such a steep slope, we flick it out down the slope. I hold the line tight to the Olivet. And the hook's landing on the slope and over my bait. When I've put the balls in, interestingly enough, I've not made them round in case they roll down the slope. I've flattened them. Now, sometimes what can promote a response is just having a little nugget of crumb right over the top. What's this? That's a perch. Chopped worms probably brought a few perch on. Nice stamp. Well, there's no question that today's been a toughie. We've fished that feeder for about 2 hours and we've managed the two better bream, the two skimmers on the longer line. But as I predicted really, I thought as the light starts to go, we can fish the pole and hopefully a few fish will come up that shelf. And we've managed some nice perch and a couple of these sort of smaller stamp skimmers, pound or so. And that looks like a nice hybrid. So it's been a tricky one and it's been a tough day overall, but looking at what's been caught around the lake, it's just been one of those days. Hopefully I've given you a few tips how to catch a few skimmers on the feeder. Today wasn't the day for the feeder, it was all about the pole in the end, but enjoy your fishing.